Hair black Cadillac Escalade pulled up to the gates of the estate at 6 in the evening. Richard Huntington stepped out of the car, phone glued to his ear. Talking numbers, projections, investments, always talking business, always. He was 42 but looked older. Dark circles under his eyes, his hair beginning to grey at the temples, his shoulders burdened with the weight of an empire he'd built himself, from the ground up. He was the CEO of Global Tech, one of the largest technology companies in the country, 3,000 employees, offices in 5 cities, and a fortune most people couldn't even fathom. But he also had something else, something that all the money in the world couldn't fix. A son who didn't speak. Richard walked into the estate. It was a huge house, 8 bedrooms, swimming pool, garden, home theater. Everything money could buy, but it felt empty. It felt cold. It felt like an elegant tomb, ever since Sarah died, and 3 years ago. The house had lost its soul. No more laughter. No more music. No more life. Sat in just silence. And Mikey's screams when he had his episodes. Richard walked up the stairs towards his son's room. He stopped in front of the door. He listened. Silence. That was good. It meant he wasn't having an episode. It meant the nanny had managed to calm him down. The nanny. Richard sighed. She was the 15th nanny in 3 years. He'd lost count of how many had quit, how many had run away crying, how many simply hadn't come back the next day. Taking care of Mikey wasn't easy. Nothing with Mikey was easy. Richard opened the door to the room. Mikey was sitting on the floor, staring at the wall. He was 5 years old, with brown hair like his mother, and big eyes that seemed to see things no one else could see. He didn't turn when his father came in. He never turned. "Hey, son," Richard said with a voice that tried to sound cheerful but just sounded tired. Mikey didn't respond. He never responded. Richard walked over and knelt beside him. "How was your day?" Silence. "Did the therapist come today?" Silence. Richard looked around. The room was filled with expensive toys, Legos, cars, dolls, puzzles, everything a child could want. But Mikey didn't play with any of it. He just stared at the wall, or the lights, or his own hands moving in front of his eyes. Richard felt the familiar knot in his throat. The knot he felt every time he saw his son. The knot of guilt, the knot of helplessness, the knot of failure. He'd spent millions on the best doctors, the best therapists, the best treatments, and nothing had worked. Mikey still didn't speak, still didn't make eye contact, still didn't respond when he was called. He was still trapped in his own world. A world that Richard couldn't enter. "I love you, son," Richard whispered, stroking the boy's hair. Mikey didn't react, as if his father didn't exist, as if he were completely alone in that room filled with toys he never used. Richard stood up and left the room. He couldn't stay any longer. He couldn't bear to see his son like that. He walked downstairs and went straight to his office. He had work to do. There was always work to do. Work was easy. Work had solutions. Work didn't look at him with empty eyes that didn't recognize him. He sat down at his computer and opened his emails. 123 new messages. Perfect. Something to keep his mind occupied. Something to distract him from the pain of not being able to connect with his own son. Mikey's story was tragic. Like so many stories of broken families, Sarah, his mother, had died when he was 2 years old. Car crash, a rainy night, a drunk driver, and in a second, everything had ended. Richard had been in a meeting when he received the call. "Mr. Huntington, there's been an accident. Your wife is at the hospital." He'd run. He'd driven like a maniac through the wet streets. He'd arrived at the hospital with his heart in his throat. But it was too late. Sarah was already gone. All he had left was Mikey. a 2-year-old boy crying for a mommy who was never coming back. At first, Richard thought Mikey was simply grieving, that it was normal for a child to withdraw after losing his mother, that with time, he would recover. But time passed, and Mikey didn't recover. On the contrary, he got worse. He stopped talking. He stopped making eye contact. He started having violent episodes where he screamed for hours non-stop. Richard took him to the best pediatricians, and then came the diagnosis: autism spectrum disorder, severe, with a non-verbal component. Richard heard the doctor's words as if they were coming from far away. Autism. His son had autism. "What does that mean, doctor? What can I do?" The doctor looked at him with a mixture of compassion and professionalism. "It means that Mikey perceives the world differently, Mr. Huntington. His brain processes information differently. It's not that he doesn't want to communicate, it's that he can't do it in the conventional way." "But there's treatment, right? There's something that can be done?" "There are therapies, some occupational therapy, speech therapy, behavioral therapy. They can help improve his skills. But I must be honest with you, autism has no cure. It's something he'll live with his entire life." Richard had left the office stunned. Autism. His son had autism, and there was nothing he could do to fix it. The next 3 years were hell. Richard hired the best specialists, therapists costing $1,000 an hour, experimental programs, alternative treatments, everything money could buy. But nothing worked. Mikey still didn't speak, still had episodes, still stared into space as if the world didn't exist. And Richard still couldn't connect with him. He didn't know how to do it. He didn't know how to reach that child who seemed to live on another planet. Every time he tried to hug him, Mikey stiffened and screamed. Every time he tried to play with him, Mikey ignored him completely. Every time he tried to talk to him, Mikey looked right through him as if he were transparent. Richard started spending more time at the office, not because he didn't love his son. He loved him with all his soul. But he didn't know how to show it, and the constant rejection, the lack of connection, the feeling of being a stranger in his own son's life. It was too painful. It was easier to work. It was easier to lose himself in numbers and charts and endless meetings. It was easier to pretend everything was fine. Meanwhile, the nannies came and went. The first one lasted 6 months. She quit after Mikey bit her during a meltdown. The second one lasted 3 months. She left crying, saying she couldn't handle the screaming. The third, the fourth, the fifth. None lasted more than a few weeks. Some were incompetent. Others simply weren't prepared for the needs of a child with severe autism. And Richard, desperate, kept searching. So they kept spending fortunes on elite nanny agencies, kept hoping to find someone who could take care of his son, someone who wouldn't give up, someone who could do what he couldn't, connect with Mikey. It was then that Mariana arrived. Mariana Vasconcelos was 38 years old and one of the most respected behavioral therapists in the country. She had studied at the best universities, had doctorates, certifications, and awards. She had worked with hundreds of children with autism, and she had a method, the Vasconcelos method, she called it. An intensive behavioral therapy program based on positive and negative reinforcement, strict routines, and controlled stimulation. Richard hired her without hesitation. If anyone could help Mikey, it was her. Mariana arrived at the estate on a Monday morning. She was a tall, slender woman, with blonde hair pulled back in an impeccable bun. She wore designer clothes and carried an Italian leather briefcase full of educational materials. "Mr. Huntington," she said, shaking his hand firmly. "I'm ready to begin. Thank you for coming. Doctor, I know your time is valuable. Any time invested in a child is valuable. Mr. Huntington, now. I need to see the patient." Richard led her to Mikey's room. The boy was sitting in his usual spot, facing the wall. Mariana observed him for a long moment, taking notes on a tablet. How many hours a day does he spend like this? Many, sometimes all day. And the meltdowns, how often do they occur? Almost every day, sometimes several times a day. Mariana nodded. I'm going to implement my program immediately. I need you to give me complete access to the child's routine, meal times, sleep, bath, everything. Whatever you need, yes, doctor. And I need you to fire the current nanny. Richard frowned. What nanny? We don't have a nanny right now. The last one quit 2 weeks ago. Mariana looked at him, surprised. Then who takes care of the child when you work? Richard looked down. The house staff. They take turns. That's unacceptable. Mr. Huntington, a child with Mikey's needs requires specialized attention 24 hours a day. I know. I'm looking for someone. But it's not easy to find. I'll take care of it. I have contacts at several agencies. I'll get you someone qualified. Thank you, doctor. Mariana looked at Mikey again. We're going to bring him out of that world. Mr. Huntington, I promise you. Richard wanted to believe her, desperately wanted to believe her, but he had heard those promises before, and they had all ended in disappointment. A week later, Mariana introduced the new nanny. Richard was in his office when his assistant informed him that Dr. Vasconcelos had arrived with the candidate. He went down to the living room expecting to see a young, professional woman with impeccable credentials. What he saw left him bewildered. It was a black woman, heavy-set, with graying hair pulled back in a colorful headscarf. She had to be at least 65 years old. She wore a simple floral dress and comfortable shoes. She didn't look like an elite nanny. Now she looked like someone's grandmother. Mr. Huntington, Mariana said, with a tone suggesting that she wasn't entirely convinced either. I present to you Gloria Santos. She's the only candidate the agency could find with immediate availability. The woman stepped forward and extended her hand with a warm smile. Nice to meet you, sir. You can call me Glorinha. Everyone calls me that. Richard shook her hand and still confused. Nice to meet you. Mrs. Gloria, do you have experience with special needs children? Glorinha nodded. I was a special education teacher for 30 years in Dashinsa. I retired 5 years ago, but I miss the children. That's why I started working as a nanny. 30 years, Richard thought. That was something. And have you worked with autistic children before? Many, sir. Each one different. Each one special in their own way. Mariana interjected. I must warn you, Mr. Huntington, that Mrs. Gloria doesn't have formal certifications in behavioral therapy. Her methods are traditional. Glorinha smiled without offense. My methods are the ones that work. Doctor, every child is different. What works for one doesn't work for another. You have to listen to the child to know what they need. Mariana pursed her lips. With all due respect, Mrs. Gloria, science has proven protocols that... Science is wonderful, doctor, but children aren't laboratory experiments. They're little people who need love and patience. Richard watched the exchange with interest. There was something about Glorinha that inspired confidence. Something in her smile, in her calm voice, in the way she talked about the children. I want to meet Mikey, Glorinha said. May I see him? Richard nodded. Of course. Come with me. He led her to Mikey's room. The boy was in his usual spot, facing the wall. Glorinha stopped at the door and observed him for a long moment. She didn't enter. She didn't speak. She just watched. Richard was about to say something when Glorinha raised her hand, asking him for silence. She stayed there, motionless, for almost 5 minutes. Then, very slowly, she entered the room. She sat on the floor, a few feet from Mikey, without looking directly at him, and she began to hum a soft melody. simple. A lullaby that Richard didn't recognize. Mikey didn't react, but he didn't scream either. Glorinia continued humming, minute after minute. And then, something incredible happened. Mikey moved his head, just a little, almost imperceptibly. But he moved it, towards Glorinia. Richard held his breath. Glorinia continued humming as if nothing had happened, but Richard saw the small smile on her lips. She had noticed it too. After 10 minutes, Glorinia quietly got up and left the room. "What was that?" Richard asked in a low voice. Glorinia looked at him with wise eyes. "That, Mr. Huntington, was the first step. Your son reacts to music. I don't know why, but he does. And that's something I can work with. You think you can help him?" Glorinia smiled. "I'm not going to promise you miracles, sir, but I'm going to try, with all my heart." Richard watched her. This woman didn't have fancy doctorates or elegant certifications. She wasn't wearing designer clothes or carrying an Italian leather briefcase. But she had accomplished something no one had managed in 3 years. She had gotten Mikey to look at her. "You're hired," Richard said. "When can you start?" Gloria smiled. "Right now, Mr. Huntington. Right now." And that's how it all began. The first few days were spent observing. Gloria didn't try to force anything. She didn't try to make Mikey talk or look at her or play with the toys. She just sat near him and hummed. Different melodies, lullabies, nursery rhymes, sometimes just loose, improvised notes. And she watched, observed how Mikey reacted to each sound, how his body tensed with certain tones and relaxed with others, how his fingers moved to the rhythm of certain melodies. Gloria had learned something in her 30 years of experience. Children always tell you what they need, and you just have to know how to listen. And Mikey was telling her something very clear. He was telling her that music was his door, the door to his world. After a week, Gloria went to talk to Richard. She found him in his office, as always, surrounded by papers and screens. "Mr. Huntington, may I speak with you for a moment?" Richard looked up, surprised. He wasn't used to the nannies seeking him out. "Sure, Gloria. Come in. What do you need?" Gloria sat down in front of him. "I need to buy some things for Mikey." "What kind of things?" "Musical instruments, simple ones. A tambourine, a small drum, some maracas, maybe a little xylophone." Richard frowned. "Musical instruments? What for?" Gloria smiled. "Your son has an ear for music, Mr. Huntington. He reacts to music in a way he doesn't react to anything else. I think we can use that to communicate with him." Richard was thoughtful. The other therapists never mentioned anything about that. "With all due respect, sir, the other therapists were so busy applying their methods that they didn't stop to observe the child. I did, and what I saw tells me that music is the key." Richard looked at her. There was something in Gloria's conviction that made him want to believe her. "All right," he said finally. "Buy what you need. Tell my assistant to give you a company card. Thank you, Mr. Huntington. You won't regret it." Gloria got up to leave. At the door, she paused. "Mr. Huntington, one more thing. Yes, sometimes miracles take time, and don't expect immediate results, but they are coming. I promise you." And she left. Richard stared at the closed door. Miracles. It had been a long time since he had stopped believing in miracles. But maybe, just maybe, he was wrong. The next day, Gloria arrived with a bag full of instruments. She had bought a colorful tambourine, a small drum with animal pictures, some red maracas, a wooden xylophone, and several jingle bells. She took them to Mikey's room and placed them on the floor, forming a semicircle. Mikey was in his usual spot, staring at the wall. Gloria sat in the center of the semicircle and picked up the tambourine. "Good morning, my little one," she said softly. "Today we're going to make music." She started playing the tambourine, a simple rhythm, constant, hypnotic. Tum, tum, Tum. Mikey didn't react. Gloria kept playing. Tum, tum, tum. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And then, Mikey moved his fingers, just a little, to the rhythm of the tambourine. Tum, tum, tum. Gloria smiled without stopping playing. That's it, my little one. Feel the music. It's okay to feel the music. She continued playing for half an hour. Mikey didn't do anything else, but he didn't scream either. He didn't have a meltdown. He didn't run away. It was a start. In the following days, Gloria established a routine. Every morning after breakfast, she took Mikey to his room and did a music session. She always started with the tambourine, the constant rhythm that seemed to calm the boy. Afterward, she introduced other instruments, the drum, the maracas, the xylophone, and she sang simple songs with repetitive lyrics, with melodies that stuck in your head. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. Mikey didn't sing, he didn't talk, but he listened. Gloria could see it in his eyes, in the way his body relaxed, in the small movements of his hands. The boy was in there, waiting for someone to find a way to get him out. 2 weeks later, something incredible happened. Gloria was singing as always, the Little Star song, Mikey's favorite, she had noticed. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. And then, Mikey opened his mouth. No word came out, but a sound did. La, a single syllable, an attempt to imitate the melody. Gloria almost stopped singing in shock, but she restrained herself. She couldn't scare the boy. She couldn't make a fuss. She kept singing as if nothing had happened. How I wonder what you are. La, la. Mikey was trying to sing. Gloria felt tears in her eyes, but she continued. Up above the world so high. La la la. For the first time in 3 years, Mikey was making sounds with a purpose. It wasn't talking, not yet, but it was communicating. It was a miracle, a small, beautiful miracle. Gloria finished the song with her heart pounding a mile a minute. Very good, my little one, she said in a trembling voice. Very good. Mikey looked at her. For the first time, he looked her directly in the eyes and would just for a second wait. But he did it. And Gloria knew that they had crossed a barrier that all the experts had said was impossible to cross. That night, Gloria wanted to tell Richard what had happened, but Richard wasn't there. He had a business dinner. He arrived at 11 at night when Mikey was already asleep. Gloria waited for him in the living room. Mr. Huntington, I have good news. Richard looked at her with tired eyes. What happened? Mikey made sounds today. He tried to sing with me. Richard stood still. Sing? Well, not exactly sing, but he made sounds with the melody. It's the first time he's done that, right? Richard nodded slowly. The first time. He had never made any sound other than screaming. Gloria smiled. It's progress, sir. Small, but significant. The boy is responding to the music. I think we can use that to help him communicate. Richard sat down on the sofa as if his legs were failing him. Do you really think it can work? I don't think so, sir. I know so. Your son has something special. He has an ear. He has rhythm. He just needed someone to give Mikey the right tool. Richard ran his hands over his face. I've been trying to connect with him for 3 years. 3 years, and I just couldn't get through. Sarah sat down beside him. It's not your fault, Mr. Huntington. Autism is complicated. Every child is different. And sometimes, as parents, we're too close to see what they need. But you saw it. In 1 week, you saw what I couldn't see in 3 years. Because I wasn't looking for what was wrong. I was looking for what was right. And what's right about Mikey is his ear. His sensitivity to music. That's a gift, Mr. Huntington, not a disability. Richard looked at her with watery eyes. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for not giving up on my son. I never give up on children, Mr. Huntington. Never. They sat in silence for a moment. Then, Richard stood up. Tomorrow, I want to see a session. I want to see what you do with him. Pasty Sarah nodded. It will be my pleasure, sir. But you have to promise me something. What's that? That you'll stay quiet? That you won't intervene? That you'll just observe? Children sense tension. If you're nervous, Mikey will feel it and shut down. Richard nodded. I promise. Good. Then I'll see you tomorrow at 9. Richard went up to his bedroom, for the first time in a long time. He went to bed with something akin to hope. The next morning, Richard arrived at Mikey's room at 9 o'clock sharp. Sarah was already there, with the instruments laid out on the floor. Mikey was sitting in his usual spot, looking at the maracas with curiosity. Good morning, Mr. Huntington, Sarah said softly. Sit over there, in the corner, and remember, just observe. Richard nodded and sat down in silence. Sarah settled in front of Mikey and picked up the tambourine. Good morning, my little man. Shall we sing a song? She began to play the familiar rhythm. Boom, boom, boom. Mikey looked at her, not directly into her eyes, but in her general direction. Richard held his breath. Sarah began to sing. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. And then it happened. La, la. Mikey was making sounds, trying to follow the melody. Richard felt his heart stop. His son was singing. They weren't words. They were just sounds, but they were sounds with a purpose. Sounds that followed a pattern. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever heard. Sarah kept singing, without stopping, encouraging Mikey with small gestures. What is that you long for? La 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 la. Richard couldn't believe what he was seeing. His son. The boy who didn't speak. The boy who stared into space. The boy who seemed to live in another world. He was there. Present. Connected. Through music. The session lasted half an hour. When it ended, Mikey went back to his usual state, looking at the wall. Silent. But something had changed. Something had changed forever. Richard left the room with tears in his eyes. Sarah followed him. Did you see it, Mr. Huntington? Yes, I saw it. That's just the beginning. Each day we advance a little more. One day maybe he'll be able to say real word, but even if he never speaks, he's already communicating. He's already connecting. That's what matters. Richard hugged her. It was an awkward, unexpected hug, but Sarah received it warmly. Thank you, Richard whispered. Thank you for giving me back my son. Sarah smiled. Don't thank me yet, sir. We still have a lot of work ahead of us, but Richard had already decided something. Whatever happened, Sarah would stay, no matter the cost. This woman had done in weeks what no one had managed in years, and he wasn't going to let her go. But not everyone was happy with Sarah's progress. Marianne, the behavioral therapist, had been watching with growing frustration. Every time she visited the estate for her sessions, she found Sarah singing with Mikey, playing instruments, doing what she considered meaningless games. Where was the structure? Where were the protocols? Where were the behavioral reinforcements that she had designed? One day, Marianne confronted Richard. Mr. Huntington, I need to speak to you about the nanny. What is it about Sarah? Her methods are completely unscientific. She's wasting time with music and songs when she should be implementing my behavioral therapy program. Richard looked at her coldly. Your behavioral therapy program didn't work, Doctor. We've been at it for 3 months, and Mikey hasn't shown any progress with your methods. And these treatments take time. Sarah got my son to make sounds in 2 weeks, something you didn't achieve in 3 months. Marianne pursed her lips. Those sounds aren't language, Mr. Huntington. They're just meaningless imitation. To me, they mean everything. They mean my son is there, that he can communicate, that there's hope. With all due respect, sir, Mrs. Sarah doesn't have the credentials to... With all due respect, doctor, I don't care about credentials. I care about results, and Sarah is getting results. Marianne fell silent, furious. I understand, she said finally. Then I suppose my services are no longer needed. I'm not saying that. You can continue with your sessions, but Sarah stays. And her work with Mikey continues. Marianne nodded stiffly. Very well, Mr. Huntington, but I warn you that mixing methods can be counterproductive for the child. I'll keep that in mind. Marianne left, clearly upset. Richard sighed. He knew he was taking a risk. Marianne was the expert. She had the degrees, the certifications, the accolades. But Sarah had something more important. She had results. And for now, that was the only thing that mattered. But Marianne didn't give up. She had too much pride, too much reputation to protect. If people found out that some no-name nanny had achieved more than her with an autistic child, her career would be ruined. She began to document everything that Sarah did. Every music session, every song, every game. She took photos, videos, detailed notes, and she began to look for flaws, anything she could use to discredit the nanny. A month later, Marianne spoke to Richard again. This time she brought a folder full of documents. Mr. Huntington, I need to show you something. Richard looked up from his computer impatiently. What is it now, doctor? Marianne put the folder on the desk. I've been monitoring Mikey's progress with Mrs. Sarah's methods, and I have to tell you that the results are concerning. Richard frowned. Concerning. Mikey has improved more in the last month than in the previous 3 years. He's improved in some superficial aspects, Mr. Huntington. He makes sounds. He occasionally looks at people. But there are no real advancements in the critical areas. He hasn't developed functional language. He hasn't improved his self-care skills. He hasn't reduced the frequency of his episodes. Richard opened the folder. There were charts, statistics, detailed analyses, all very professional, all very scientific. Look at this chart, Mr. Huntington. It shows the frequency of Mikey's episodes in the last month. As you can see, there hasn't been a significant reduction. Richard looked at the chart. It was true. The episodes were still happening almost every day. But there was something different. The episodes are shorter, Richard said, and less intense. Gloria can calm him with music. Sarah shook her head. That's not progress, sir. It's dependence. If the child only calms down with music, what's going to happen when there's no music available? We're creating a problematic pattern. Richard rubbed his temples. What do you suggest then, Doctor? Sarah leaned forward. I suggest we dismiss Mrs. Gloria and go back to my behavioral therapy program, with exclusive dedication, without distractions. Richard stared at her. You want me to fire the only person who has managed to connect with my son? I want what's best for Mikey, Mr. Huntington. And science tells us that structured methods are the best option for children with his condition. Richard remained silent for a moment. He was thinking about Mikey, about his eyes when he sang with Gloria, about the way he relaxed when she played the tambourine. He was thinking about the nights of screams and desperation, and how now, for the first time, there were moments of peace. I'm not going to fire Gloria, he said finally. Sarah pursed her lips. Mr. Huntington, with all due respect, I think you're letting your emotions cloud your judgment. And I think, Doctor, that you are letting your ego cloud yours. The silence was glacial. Sarah stood up. Very well, Mr. Huntington. But I warn you that you are making a decision that could harm your son's long-term development. And when things go wrong, don't say I didn't warn you. She left the office without saying goodbye. Richard stared at the folder full of charts and statistics. Was he making a mistake? Was it possible that Sarah was right? That Gloria's methods were not enough? He needed to talk to someone. He needed another perspective, but he had no one. Camilla was gone. His parents had died years ago. His friends had drifted away when he locked himself away at work. He was alone. Completely alone. Except for Gloria. That night, Richard went down to the kitchen to get something to drink. He found Gloria sitting at the table, drinking tea. "Good evening, Mr. Huntington. Couldn't you sleep?" Something like that. Richard poured himself a glass of water and sat down across from her. "Gloria, can I ask you a question?" "Of course, sir." "Do you really believe you can help Mikey? I don't mean the sounds and the music. I mean everything. That he can live a normal life, that he can really communicate, that he can be happy." Gloria looked at him with wise eyes. "Mr. Huntington, what is a normal life?" Richard didn't know how to respond. "My younger brother was deaf," Gloria continued. "He was born without being able to hear anything. At that time, people said he could never have a normal life, that he would be a burden on the family, that we should put him in an institution. What happened to him?" Gloria smiled. "He learned sign language. He got married. He had 3 children. He worked all his life as a carpenter. He died at 78 years old, surrounded by his family, but he could communicate with sign language." "Exactly, Mr. Huntington. He couldn't speak like you and I, but he could communicate. In his way, with his language." Gloria took his hand. "Mikey may never speak like a normal child. He may never go to a regular school. He may never have a life as you imagined it for him. But that doesn't mean he can't be happy. It doesn't mean he can't communicate him. It doesn't mean he can't love and be loved." Richard felt his eyes fill with tears. "Dr. Sarah says your methods aren't scientific, that I'm making a mistake by trusting you." Gloria nodded. "The doctor has her reasons for thinking that way. She believes in science, in protocols, in what can be measured and quantified. And that's fine. Science has helped many children. But science doesn't know everything, Mr. Huntington. There are things that can't be measured. A parent's love, the connection between 2 souls, the power of a song to reach where words cannot." Richard wiped away his tears. "What should I do, Gloria? I'm lost." Gloria smiled. "You must follow your heart, sir. And your heart already knows the answer." Richard nodded slowly. "My heart tells me that you are the best chance my son has. Then keep giving me that opportunity. And I promise you, I won't disappoint you." Richard looked at her. This woman, this little old lady without titles or certifications, this stranger who had come into his life just a month ago. She was the only person who gave him hope, the only one who seemed to understand what he needed. "You're staying, Gloria. No matter what, you're staying." Gloria smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Huntington. You won't regret it." Richard went up to his room with a sense of peace he hadn't felt in a long time. He had made a decision, and he was willing to live with the consequences. But he didn't know that the consequences would come sooner than expected. 2 weeks later, Sarah made her move. She had been collecting information, talking to other professionals, building a case, and finally, she had what she needed: a report, signed by 3 recognized specialists, declaring that Gloria's methods were potentially harmful to Mikey's development. Sarah presented the report to Richard with a triumphant smile. "Read this, Mr. Huntington. It is the opinion of 3 of the best autism specialists in the country." Richard read the report with a frown. It was devastating. According to the experts, Gloria's musical methods could create harmful dependencies. They could delay the development of functional language. They could give false hope to the family. They recommended immediately ending the musical program and implementing an intensive behavioral therapy protocol. Richard sat down heavily. 3 experts, 3 professional opinions. against the word of a grandmother with no fancy credentials. What was Richard to do? Sarah watched him with satisfaction. As you can see, Mr. Huntington, I'm not the only one who thinks Mrs. Gloria is harming your son. These professionals have decades of experience. Their opinions are highly respected. Richard glanced at the report. He looked at Sarah. He thought of Mikey. He thought of the sounds Mikey made when singing with Gloria. He thought of the peaceful look in his eyes when listening to the music. I need time to think, he finally said. Sarah nodded. Of course, Mr. Huntington, but don't take too long. Every day that passes, the damage gets worse. She left the office, leaving the report on the desk. Richard stared at the document. 3 experts against a grandmother, science against intuition, credentials against results. What was he to choose? That night, Richard couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned in bed, thinking about the report, Sarah's word, Glorinia's promises. At 3 in the morning, he got up and went to Mikey's room. The boy was sleeping peacefully. His face was relaxed, tranquil. Richard sat by his bedside and looked at him. This was his son, his only son, the only family he had left, and he had to make a decision that could change his life forever. What do I do, Sarah? He whispered into the darkness. What would you do? There was no answer, only the silence of the night. But in that silence, Richard remembered something. He remembered Sarah singing to Mikey when he was a baby, lullabies, soft melodies. He remembered how the baby calmed down in her arms when she sang. He remembered how music had always been a part of their family. And then he understood. Gloria wasn't doing something new. She was continuing what Sarah had started. She was using music to connect with Mikey, the same music his mother sang to him. Richard felt tears rolling down his cheeks. Thank you, Sarah, he whispered. Thank you for showing me the way. The next morning, Richard called Sarah to his office. I've made a decision, Doctor. Sarah smiled, sure of her victory. I'm glad to hear that, Mr. Huntington. I can start the new protocol immediately. Richard shook his head. You misunderstood me, Doctor. My decision is that Gloria stays and her methods continue. Sarah paled. But the report says what those experts think. But none of them have seen my son. None have spent time with him. None know what I know. And what do you know, Mr. Huntington? That my son responds to music. That my wife sang to him when he was a baby. That Gloria is doing something that works. I don't care what the experts say. I care about what I see with my own eyes. Sarah looked at him with contained fury. You're making a serious mistake, Mr. Huntington. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. He's my son, and I decide how he's cared for. Then you no longer need my services. No, I no longer need them. Sarah stood up stiffly. You'll regret this decision, Mr. Huntington. I guarantee it. Maybe, but at least I'll be able to look in the mirror, knowing I followed my heart. Sarah left without saying another word. Richard stared at the closed door. He had fired the expert. He had chosen the grandmother. He hoped he wasn't wrong. The following weeks were intense. Without Sarah, Gloria had total freedom to work with Mikey, and she seized every moment. The music sessions became longer, more elaborate, more personalized. Gloria had noticed that Mikey responded better to certain melodies, certain rhythms, certain tonalities. She started creating special songs for him, songs that incorporated his name, songs that described his daily activities, songs that expressed emotions. This is the hand-washing song, Gloria sang as she led him to wash his hands. We wash our hands, hands with soap and water, water. And Mikey didn't sing the words, but he hummed the melody, and little by little he began to anticipate the routines. When Gloria started the hand-washing song, he got up and walked to the sink. When she sang the eating song, he sat at the table. When she sang the bedtime song, he lay down in bed. It was communication, real and functional. Gloria was teaching him to understand the world through music. Richard watched from afar, amazed. His son was changing. Not dramatically, not like in the movies, but changing. There were fewer tantrums, Fewer screams, fewer nights of despair. And there was something else. Something Richard had never seen before. Mikey was smiling, not all the time, only at certain moments, and when singing with Glorinia, when listening to his favorite melody, when feeling the rhythm of the tambourine. But he was smiling. And for Richard, that was worth more than all the reports from all the experts in the world. A month after Sarah's dismissal, Richard noticed something different. He was in his office, as always, working late. But for the first time in a long time, he didn't want to be there. He wanted to be home, with his son, watching him sing with Glorinia. He closed his computer at 5 in the afternoon. His employees looked at him, surprised. The boss never left so early. But Richard didn't offer explanations. He simply left. He drove home with a sense of anticipation he hadn't felt in years. He wanted to see his son. He wanted to hear him sing. He wanted to be part of his world. He arrived at the estate and entered silently. He could hear music coming from upstairs, Glorinia's voice, the tambourine, and something else. A small voice, high-pitched, trying to follow the melody. Richard climbed the stairs, his heart pounding. He approached Mikey's room. The door was ajar. He could see Glorinia sitting in the rocking chair. With Mikey in her lap, they were singing together. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. How I wonder what you are. Richard stood paralyzed in the hallway. His son was singing, not just making sounds, singing, following the melody, moving his lips with the syllables. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen in his life. But that wasn't all. As Richard watched, Mikey did something he had never done. He raised his head and looked Glorinia in the eyes, directly, without looking away. And he smiled, a real smile, a smile of connection, a smile of love. Glorinia returned the smile with tears in her eyes. That's right, my little one. Very, very good. Richard couldn't contain himself any longer. He walked into the room. Mikey looked at him, and for the first time in 5 years, he reached out his arms towards his father. Richard froze. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. His son who had never hugged him, his son who would stiffen every time he tried to touch him, was reaching out his arms, asking him to pick him up. Richard crossed the room in 2 strides and took his son into his arms. Mikey didn't scream. He didn't resist. He snuggled against his father's chest and continued humming the melody of the song. Richard started to cry. Tears of joy, tears of relief, tears of a father who had finally found his son. Sarah watched them with a smile. I told you miracles take time, Mr. Huntington. Richard couldn't speak. He could only hug his son and cry and feel, for the first time in 5 years, that everything was going to be all right. That night, Richard didn't go back to his office. He stayed home, with his son, with Sarah. They ate dinner together. For the first time in years, Richard sat at the table with Mikey and shared a meal. The boy didn't speak. He didn't look at his father directly, but he was there, present, connected in a way he had never been before. Sarah watched them with a smile. Are you starting to see him, Mr. Huntington? Richard looked at her with watery eyes. See him? Your son. The boy who was always there, waiting for someone to find him. Richard looked at Mikey. The boy was eating his dinner calmly, without tantrums, without screaming, occasionally humming the melody of the song they had sung earlier. How didn't I see it before? Richard whispered. How could I have been so blind? You weren't blind, sir. You were scared. Scared of not being able to reach him, scared of failing him, scared of him rejecting you. Richard nodded. She was right. All this time, he had been running from the pain of not being able to connect with his son. He had hidden in work, in meetings, in numbers, because it was easier than facing the reality. But he wasn't going to run anymore. He wasn't going to hide anymore. He was going to be present. He was going to be there for his son, no matter what it cost. From that night on, everything changed. Richard reduced his work hours. delegated responsibilities, started coming home early, and joined Sarah's music sessions. At first he felt clumsy. He didn't know how to sing. He had no rhythm. He felt ridiculous playing the tambourine. But Sarah encouraged him. "It doesn't matter if you sing well or badly, Mr. Huntington. What matters is that you are here, that you are present, that your son sees you." And Mikey saw him. For the first time in his life, Mikey saw his father. Not as a stranger who appeared every now and then. Not as a distant figure who lived in the same house but seemed from another planet. He saw him as part of his world, as someone who sang with him, who played music with him, who was there, and little by little. Mikey started to get closer. One day, while Richard was clumsily singing "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star," Mikey came over and sat next to him. He didn't say anything. He didn't look at him directly, but he sat next to him. And that was enough. Richard felt his heart explode with joy. "Very good, my boy," he whispered. "Very, very good." Sarah watched them with tears in her eyes. "It's working," she thought. "It's finally working." The following months were of discovery. Richard learned things about his son he had never known. He learned that Mikey had perfect pitch. He could identify any musical note just by hearing it once. He learned that he liked melodies in minor keys, that they calmed him down more than major keys. He learned that his favorite color was blue, not because he said it, but because he always looked for blue objects. He learned that he liked the smell of lavender, that he relaxed when Sarah used lavender essential oil in the diffuser. He learned 1,000 little things about his son, things he had been too busy to notice, things he had been too scared to discover, and each discovery was a gift, a piece of his son he could finally know. A year after Sarah arrived, Mikey did something incredible. They were in their usual music session. Richard, Sarah, and Mikey sitting in a circle in the room. Sarah began to sing, "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." Mikey accompanied her, as always. La 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 la. But then something different happened. Mikey stopped humming. He opened his mouth and said a word. "S. Tar." Richard froze. Sarah held her breath. Mikey looked at them both and repeated, "Star." It was the first word Mikey had said in his life, and it was the word from his favorite song. Richard started to cry. He couldn't help it. The tears came out on their own. "You said star," he whispered. "You said a word. My boy said a word." Mikey looked at him, and for a moment, just for a moment, their eyes met. It wasn't much, just a second. But in that second, Richard saw his son. He saw the boy he had been waiting for all these years. He saw love. Sarah hugged them both. "We did it," she said, crying. "We did it, Mr. Huntington." Richard hugged his son tightly. And Mikey, for the first time, hugged him back. The news of Mikey's first word spread quickly. Richard called Mariana's old agency to tell them. He wanted them to know. He wanted everyone to know what Sarah had achieved. The agency asked him to write a testimonial, an account of what had happened, of how a nanny without formal training had achieved what the best experts couldn't. Richard wrote the testimonial gladly. He titled it, "The Miracle of Music," and he shared it everywhere, on social media, in groups for parents of children with autism, in special education forums. The story went viral. Thousands of people read it. Hundreds of parents wrote to him thanking him for sharing it. Some even started using music with their own children. And Sarah became a celebrity. She wasn't looking for it. She didn't care about fame. But fame found her anyway. Journalists interviewed her. Universities invited her to give talks. Autism experts wanted to study her methods. Sarah accepted some invitations, rejected others. "I'm not interested in fame, Mr. Huntington," she said one day. "I'm interested in helping children, that's all." And she kept doing it. She kept taking care of Mikey, kept singing with him. He continued to teach him how to communicate through music. And the progress continued. After the first word, more came. Mama, papa, water, sun. Simple words, it's basic words, but words nonetheless. Mikey would never speak like a normal child. The experts were right about that. But he could communicate. He could express what he wanted. He could connect with the people he loved. And that was more than enough. One day, Sarah returned. Richard was in his office when his assistant informed him that Dr. Morrison wanted to see him. Richard hesitated. He didn't want to see her. He didn't want to hear her criticisms. But something told him he should. "Send her in," he said finally. Sarah entered. She looked different, more humble, less arrogant. "Mr. Huntington, thank you for seeing me." Richard nodded coldly. "What can I do for you, doctor?" Sarah sat down. "I came to apologize." Richard raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Apologize?" Sarah nodded. "I read your testimony, The Miracle of Music, and I watched the videos of Mikey that you shared online." Richard waited. "I was wrong," Sarah said finally. "I was wrong about Gloria. I was wrong about Mikey. I was wrong about you." Richard said nothing. "I was so convinced that my methods were the right ones that I couldn't see what was right in front of my eyes. I couldn't see that every child is different, that what works for one doesn't work for another." Sarah lowered her gaze. "Gloria saw what I couldn't see, and she achieved what I couldn't achieve. And instead of learning from her, I tried to destroy her." Richard looked at her. The woman in front of him was not the same one he had met a year ago. This woman had been humbled, defeated, and it had changed her. "What do you want, doctor?" Richard asked. "I want to apologize to you, to your son, and to Gloria. I want to learn from her. I want to be a better professional." Richard leaned back in his chair. "Gloria doesn't hold grudges. She would forgive you if you asked her. And you, Mr. Huntington?" Richard thought for a moment. This woman had caused him a lot of pain. She had tried to separate Gloria from his son. She had put her ego above Mikey's well-being. But she had also had the courage to admit her mistake, and that counted for something. "I forgive you, doctor, but I don't want you near my son." Sarah nodded. "I understand. I don't deserve it." She stood up to leave. At the door, she stopped. "Mr. Huntington, one last thing." "Yes, take care of Gloria. People like her are very rare. Don't let her go." Richard smiled. "I have no intention of doing that." Sarah left. Richard stared at the closed door. He had closed a chapter. Now he could concentrate on what mattered. His son, his family, his future. 5 years later. Mikey was 10 years old. He was no longer the silent child who stared at the wall for hours. Now he was a child who sang, who played the piano, who communicated through music in ways that amazed everyone. He had learned to read, to write, to do basic math. He didn't go to a regular school. He had private tutors who used methods adapted to his needs. But he was learning. He was growing. He was living. And most importantly, he was happy. Richard had changed too. He was no longer the work-obsessed CEO who ignored his son. Now he was a present father, a father who sang with his son every night, a father who had learned to play the piano just so he could make music together. He had sold half of his company. He had delegated most of his responsibilities. Now he worked from home, a few hours a day, enough to keep the business running. But his real job was being a father. And that job made him happier than any business ever could. And Gloria? Gloria was still there. She was 73 years old now. She was a little slower, a little more tired, but she was still singing, still making music with Mikey every day. She was no longer just the nanny. She was part of the family. Richard had offered her retirement with a generous pension, but she had refused. "I'm not going anywhere, Mr. Huntington. This child needs me, and I need him." And Richard understood. Gloria had found in Mikey the grandson she never had, and Mikey had found in Gloria the grandmother he always needed. They were family, not by blood, by choice, by love. One summer day, Richard and Gloria were sitting in the garden, watching Mikey play the piano on the terrace. The boy was playing a beautiful melody, complex, something he had composed himself, because it turned out that Mikey didn't just love music, he was a musical genius. He could play any instrument after hearing it once. He could compose melodies that made people cry. He could express emotions through music that he could never express with words. Richard watched him with pride. "Look what you accomplished, Gloria. Look what he's become." Gloria shook her head. "I didn't accomplish anything, Mr. Huntington. I just gave him the tool. He did the rest." "But you gave him the right tool, the tool that no one else saw." Gloria smiled. "All the tools were there. You just had to know where to look." They sat in silence, listening to the music. "Gloria," Richard said after a moment. "Yes? Thank you for everything, for my son, for me, for giving us our lives back." Gloria took his hand. "Don't thank me, Mr. Huntington. Thank your son. He is the miracle. I was just the instrument." Richard looked at Mikey. The boy had stopped playing and was looking at them from the terrace. And for the first time, he did something that Richard would never forget. He smiled, a wide smile, a happy smile. And he said, "Dad, Gloria, I love you." 3 words. 3 words that changed everything. Richard felt his heart break with emotion. "I love you too, son," he said with a trembling voice. "I love you more than anything in this world." Mikey returned to his piano and continued playing. Richard stared at his son. This was his life now. This was his family. This was his miracle. And it all had started the day he came home early. The day he opened the door to his son's room. The day he saw a simple nanny doing what no one else had been able to do. That day, Richard had found his son, and along the way, he had found himself. The music continued to play on the terrace, a beautiful melody, full of hope, full of love. The melody of a family that had been rebuilt, note by note. Song after song, miracle after miracle, and in the garden, bathed in the summer sun. A father and a grandmother listened. Tears welled in their eyes, smiles danced on their lips, with the certainty that it had all been worth it, because in the end, love always finds a way, always, even when the world screams it's impossible, even when the experts declare it can't be done, even when all seems lost, love finds its way. And the music. The music is just another way of saying, "I love you." Another way to connect, another way to exist. Mikey had understood this all along. And thanks to Gloria, he was finally able to share it with the world. The end.